So I mentioned Jay Gruden. Jay Gruden had some interesting quotes about the Washington football team. He said when it came time to our pick, we'd always talk about the picks, where we'd like to go, what happens if a player was gone, and we did all the scenarios. And then Snyder would come in off his yacht and make the pick.
That is Gruden going hard.
Right?
And I love it.
I wonder why it took him so long to go after him. I mean, he was there for a whole year and didn't talk about it.
Well, he might have still had some money owed to him.
I still have checks with that old logo. Show up in my mailbox every 2 weeks, man.
Right. Plus, it's not a great look when you trash your former employer. You know what I mean? When you're trying to get back in the league, et cetera. So, but at some point, the truth has to come out. Yeah.
And it's just it's a sign of a broken and dysfunctional organization. If that's the way the ultimate picks come down, especially your top picks. And I don't know if he has that sort of input with all of the top picks, but
I'm hoping that was just a Haskins
Hopefully
thing.
It was just a Haskins, but we don't know. We don't know what sort of influence he's
right. But if he was the one that had to make every sort of big pick, like they would give him all their input and who they wanted, and ultimately he was deciding.
Right.
Well, now you know why we're so bad.
Right.
Do you think it's changed, though, with Rivera in charge?
It better have.
It always
Hopefully
changes the first year.
Right.
Yes.
It always changes the first year, and then when stuff goes bad, then Dan inserts himself.
Let's see what happens next year.
If I were Rivera, I would march in the card that says, under your old system, you're 142, 193, and 1 since you've owned the team. Let's try it a different way. Mm-hmm. Let's try it with a real football guy in charge making the football decisions. Let's try it that way.
But I think you're right, because they were going to do that with Shanahan. Shanahan was supposed to be in charge, much like Rivera is. And then we always hear that Snyder was the one that really wanted RG3, that the Shanahans didn't want to make that move. They were happier with other guys. I think, ironically, I've heard that Kyle Shanahan loved Ryan Tannehill. And they didn't need to necessarily trade everything to move up for RG3, but they did. So got to believe that was because of the owner. And then it happens again with Gruden to make the move for Haskins. And so maybe it is only a matter of time before he does it again.
I do love the stories about Kyle Smith just going scorched earth on everybody as soon as the Haskins pick was made, where he's basically just saying, I can't believe we just did this.
Right.
I can't believe this happened. You guys should basically be ashamed of yourselves. And there's not shocking that he's no longer here, that he's now in Atlanta.
But some guys could get pushed around, but I don't think Rivera and Mayhew and all these guys are going to get pushed around.
No,
but I didn't think Mike would get pushed around. And when Mike was here, Mike Shanahan had say, maybe the first year or two, but after a while, he admitted that he didn't anymore.
I would love to have been in that closed-door meeting with Rivera when he went into Snyder and said, look, we're just going to have to whack Haskins. I mean, I know he's your guy. I know he's your handpicked guy. But it's just not going to work out.
I bet it wasn't that hard because, Dan's like human, and so he picks the guy. Believe it or not, he is human. Picks the guy, excited about him. But then Dan probably soured on him too. Dan saw all the nonsense.
But hopefully Rivera went in there too and said, look, this is the exact reason why you cannot be involved with this. It's your team.
You're not going to insult him that way.
You're the owner. You write the checks, but you leave the football decisions to me and my staff. That's why I was brought here.
Well, and Dan also has bigger fish to fry at this point, too.
Yeah, he's got a lot on his plate.
He's probably just letting Rivera run the show.
I hope. I think by most accounts,
and now
he let Joe. Joe was maybe the only one
he idolized
that pretty much got to do what he wanted, and he deferred to Joe.
Right.
But I think, from the outside looking in, just hearing rumors, that's about the only guy that he just completely was. And not to say that he was hands off, because I know that Joe would talk about having to explain moves to Dan, but I think that Joe got to do what he wanted.
Mm-hmm.
Whether that's going to continue with Ron. I mean, Ron seems like a tough guy, and Dan's this little weasel. But when you're writing the checks, you can't blame him for wanting to have a little input.
Well, I mean, that input has gotten him to more than 50 below 500 during his stewardship of the franchise. Of what used to be a very proud heritage franchise in the NFL.
Yeah,
And
you're
they're
damn
trying
right,
they're
Cakes.
trying to work their way back to that, but it's been a quarter century of just nubbiness
Right.
here in DC.
Yeah.
Well, nobody's surprised by the Gruden anecdote. We'd all heard it a
Of
million
course not.
times before, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I could just picture Gruden saying it and how he said it, and just joning on Snyder. Oh man.
Oh, I would love. I mean, I always said it while he was here, and Jason agrees with me. Jason played poker with him one night, and I'm sure he got some good stories.
Oh.
I would love to go out and have beers with Jay right now.
Oh, it'd be fantastic.
He'd be your-
I mean,
he'd-
I would
he'd be-
pay. I
Yeah,
might
he'd-
pay a lot of money for
He'd
that.
be one of your best friends.
Jason,
if I
he was-
could
he
get-
was pretty happy that you talked about playing poker with him too.
He wasn't
I
very happy
remember
about that.
Yeah, that's true.
But like, remember there used to be that service. It wasn't. It was like pre-cameo. Like Tiki Barber was in on it, where you could pay to
Oh,
have like lunch with a dude or whatever it was.
Like Thulio or
Yeah, right. I would. Here's the thing. I'm very cheap,
Thuzio. I can't
but
remember.
I would probably pay like $1,000 to have happy hour with Jay, and just sit down. But he had to agree that he would tell me stories.
Oh, he has to be completely
equally as well as he
uncensored.
does with the
Yeah,
veteran,
you have to tell me
players
stories.
on this football team. So, a very very well likable guy, easy to like.
Dude. But and it would have to be. He would have to allow me to record it, but just so I could not forget any story.
Right.
And eventually, I would leak them all. Eventually, I would leak
Right.
them
A
all.
source told me.
He'd give you so much good info. so
Can
many
you, I
good
mean,
stories.
honestly, wouldn't you, Jason? I'd pay. Listen, I'm very cheap. I'd pay $1,000 to have happy hour with Jay if he would give me unfettered.
I would just
2-hour
let you.
access.
I would let you pay the money,
You
and then
pay.
you tell me all the stories.
Yes.
Yeah.
You get it
cheaper
secondhand.
than
You still
me.
have $1,000 in your account.
Yeah. No, I would do that because I know those stories are epic.
Who's living in Jay
Epic.
Gruden's house now in Creighton Farms, Jason? Do you know?
Ooh,
Who's
good
moved in?
question.
They still own it.
They do.
Yeah.
What about RG3's house? Who moved in there?
I don't know. He rents it out to. He wanted to sell it, but his wife wouldn't let him, so they rent it out to somebody.
Okay, got
His
it.
first wife, you mean?
His
His
first
ex-wife.
wife. His ex-wife.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sorry, his ex-wife.
So, yeah. So where's the ex-wife? Is she like?
I don't know where she
Texas or
lives.
something?
Maybe Texas.
Was
I
she
have no
from
idea.
that? She was a college sweetheart, right?
I think so.
Yeah. So she's probably out. in
It always
Texas, who knows?
fascinates me that people rent houses with with mortgages as big as that house. I'm
Yeah,
sure
but if they
it
can rent
happens.
it, if
I
they can
wonder-
rent it,
Yeah,
then
look,
you-
I'm sure there must be a market out there for it. But I mean, I'd be stunned. If, what are they paying in rent in that per month? 10K
No
a
idea.
month?
Might be.
well, it
15K a
depends on
month?
how much they put down, Cakes, right?
Yeah,
Might
but
be.
They
sometimes
put a lot
people
down.
do that because I know somebody that did something like that when they're building a house. Okay, so they don't know exactly when their house is going to be ready.
Right.
They maybe need to sell their current house to buy the new house. And in the meantime, while the new house is getting built, they rent something that's maybe expensive. That's just
Yeah,
what
I'm
happens.
not, I don't know anything about the renters. I just know that he did want to sell it, but she was 50% owner. She said, no. I'm keeping this.
Right.
We're going to rent it out.
Valuable asset.
Yeah.
Well, look,
And-
Gruden, like you said, he's just confirming something that we already knew. The question is, does Snyder learn from it and change? As EB mentioned, he has had these moments where he's been hands off, and then all of a sudden gets his hands in it.
He can't help
So-
himself.
Hopefully he's staying out of it with Ron Rivera. I would think with all the other things that are swirling with Daniel Snyder on the legal front that he's staying away from the football side of things, but you never know.
I would just love to know who is truly available. You know, when the Martys are on the phone and they're trying to figure out what quarterback is out there, who truly is up for debate? Like, is Derek Carr truly, on the table here, or is that just dumb, pro football talk rumor stuff? Who is truly out there that they can select? I'm dying to know.
Well, I don't know that we even talked about Jared Goff breaking free, right? When we were talking about Matthew Stafford last week, did we ever mention the Rams as a
No.
possibility?
I don't think.
No,
they
but we
came up
knew
when
that
we talked
McVay
about
was
them.
unhappy with him.
Sure,
so it
we
wasn't
talked
that
about-
big of a
We
shock.
talked
No,
about
they
the
could-
backup potentially competing, but I don't know that we thought they were a player for Matthew Stafford. So
Fair.
to me, there are teams that maybe we're not thinking about that if you give them the right offer, and clearly Washington is willing to part with their first-round pick at number 19.
Most
find
teams
out
aren't
what's out
willing to
there.
give up their number one quarterback unless he's already failed them.
Yeah.
You know?
Right. It's not going to be somebody that's going to blow you away, but just like the Rams are willing to part with Goff, maybe San Francisco is willing to part with Jimmy G, because you keep hearing those rumblings.
Well, that's true, but he needs to be able to replace him. So if you give him 19,
Well, maybe
they
San
can't.
Francisco has some sort of plan. By the way, you heard that the Rams called the Packers first, right?
for
For
Aaron.
Rodgers?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, what are you
Well,
going to give
of
up
course
for
you make that
Rodgers?
Yeah.
Did they
Of course
get,
you make
did they
that
get
call.
hung up on in 20 seconds? How did that call go?
I'm sure you guys saw the same thing, is that McVay is like some island somewhere at poolside where he pulled off this deal. Did you guys read that?
He's probably in Cabo or something.
Yeah, that
Chilling.
McVay is just pulling, he's got a drink with an umbrella in it,
Right.
and he's wheeling and dealing.
I can
if
only
you were a
imagine what
boy-
he's doing to his smoking hottie of a
If
girlfriend.
you were a boy genius making
they're married now.
$6 million or whatever he's making during
right.
the offseason, you'd be doing the same thing.
Well, I'll tell you, like I said earlier in the show, all right, top of the show, there's no excuses now for the Rams. All right, Matt Stafford is now in L.A. He's not in Detroit anymore. He didn't have a great owner. He didn't have a great coach. He didn't have a running game. He had Megatron for a while, but he didn't have a defense. He's got all of that now. No excuses. You make
Right.
that deal for Matt Stafford, you better go to a Super Bowl at the very least, if not win it.
Right.
And
Well-
Goff said the right things, like he's happy to go where he's wanted.
Yeah.
He's in Detroit with
Right.
that donk, Dan Campbell.
Somebody
Who's
else
betting on
brought
that
up a-
guy to be silly.
Somebody else brought up a good point. You know what? You didn't feel wanted when the Rams gave you $80 million?
That's a great point.
What? I mean, seriously. If somebody gives me $80 million over a few years, I'm going to feel pretty wanted.
Hey, that $80
Yeah,
million
but he
goes
didn't
a-
feel wanted at the end, okay?
I guess he got jilted at the end, but I guess he
Yeah.
forgot about all those massive paydays.
Hey, you don't have to
for
pay
next 3
you don't have to pay
years.
the crazy income tax in California now. He's got to.
Yeah, I don't know what
although
it
he
is.
has to go to Detroit.
Well, it's a serious lifestyle decline. I mean, from a kid who's
Detroit
been in
does
California his
stink.
whole life,
Yeah.
went to college there, played pro there. Now he's going to be subject to miserable Michigan winters.
Yep.
That's brutal.
Gray,
Oh,
gross.
so bleak.
But don't feel
But-
sorry for his checkbook. That's
No,
for
no,
sure.
I certainly don't.
yeah. I actually have heard that there are some nice neighborhood there, though.
Oh,
Believe
I'm
it or
sure
not.
there are.
But I'm
Just the
telling you-
weather. The weather 6 months a year, 7 months a year.
Well,
sucks.
it's depressing for sure.
I'm not saying it's likely, but what if they dangle him in a trade?
Who? Goff?
Detroit. They
Not
just got him.
interested. Not interested.
Okay,
Somebody might
Washington's
be.
not interested. That's my point.
But yeah,
somebody
I mean,
might
Detroit
be
has
interested.
they have a top 5 pick, so maybe
No
they're
one's going to be that interested. I mean, they might take him, but no one's that interested in Jared Goff.
Well, not at that salary.
yeah,
I
exactly.
wouldn't think.
No. Look, they're in a tough spot. I'll tell you, I've said it a million times. I think I would be a much better basketball GM or even a baseball GM. I'd be a horrible NFL GM. I wouldn't know how to do this. I wouldn't know how to solve this riddle. But I do have a formula, I think, for what I would look for in a quarterback. And I tell you, one of the first things, remember Moneyball, and they had these rules. Billy Bean had those rules
Yeah.
they don't draft high school pitchers.
all the old
early.
scouts got so Rick when he had that meeting. They were so upset.
There are certain things that they just weren't going to do.
Yeah.
I wouldn't draft a quarterback that didn't play at least 3 years. That would be one of my weird stipulations. I'm not picking a one-year wonder. I'm not picking a Haskins type or a Trubisky that played 1 year. I'm taking a guy that's played 3 years, and I know that's somewhat rare, but he's been through he's been through the mill. He's seen a lot. He's played 30-some games. I just don't want some guy that's played 12 games.
Yeah.
That'd be one criteria. And I wouldn't want just an absolute statue. I'd want a guy that has some mobility. So I don't know who fits that criteria. Of the college guys, Jason, which of those guys in the later rounds has played 3 years? Kellen Mond is a name that I've heard a lot. How long?
He
I
played
know
forever.
Ellinger's played a long time.
Mond
right?
Ellinger played forever. Newman played. He played a lot of games for Wake Forest, but then he sat out last year.
Right.
Trask hasn't played at many. He's
You know what
played
those
way
guys
too many.
Mountain
scream to me? You know what
Matt
those
Jones
guys
played a
scream
year
to
and a
me?
half.
They scream Will Greer to me. What has Will Greer done in the NFL?
He's like a third stringer.
Yeah. I mean, those guys aren't going to do anything for you.
Well, I want a guy that's
Odds are
played
they're
a
not.
long time. I would. That's who I would err on. I would err on a guy that's played like 3 or 4 years, got a lot of film on him, seen a lot of different defenses, played some big time competition, and preferably somebody. And it doesn't seem, man, in my little commercial breakdowns that we do as kind of a goof. If you really watch these college games, there isn't very much reading of defenses going on at the college game.
Nah.
Most guys just drop back, hit that step, and they just let it go to their first target. There's very little reading of defenses, and then when you get to the NFL level, that just doesn't really fly. You got to be able to find your second and third receivers. Mm-hmm. And they don't play like that in college very often.
The first domino has fallen with Matthew Stafford moved to L.A., so we will see what continues to happen here in the quarterback market because Washington is indeed shopping. Keep it here with the Junkies on the Fan.